I've been trying to call. I've been on my own for long enough. Maybe you can show me how to love. Maybe I'm going through withdrawals. You don't even have to do too much. You can turn it on with just a touch, baby. I look around and since it's cold and empty, no one's around to judge me. I can't see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep right until I feel your heart touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. Cause I can see the sun light up the sky. So I hit the road and overdrive, baby. Hit the road and overdrive. The city's cold and empty. No one's around to judge me. I can't see clearly when you're gone. And I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your heart touch. I said, ooh, I'm drowning in the night. Oh, when I'm like this, you're the one I trust. I'm coming back to let you know I can never say it on the phone. But when I let it go this time, I said, ooh, I'm blinded by the lights. No, I can't sleep until I feel your touch. Feel free to be whoever you want to be. Feel free to dance, feel free to sing, just feel free. Feels like the world is picking on ya. Feels like it's picking on me.
Oh my goodness. Oh, here we go. Here we go. I don't know. I don't know if I have ever gone in to an episode of this podcast with more to talk about than right here today. Episode 70. Let me get this mic up here. Right here at my mouth. Episode 70 of the Two Tone Talk podcast has arrived. It is Monday, January the 8th, 2024, and the times they are a-changin'. The times they are a-changin'. How much? How much change? Well, I don't know. I have spent the last few months saying over and over and over and over again that I fully expect Mike Vrabel to remain the head coach of this team next year. I've said it over and over that I would be shocked if it were somebody other than Mike Vrabel coaching this team next year. I haven't even really given the idea of Vrabel going somewhere else much thought. It was just like, it's not going to happen. But here we are. The season just ended yesterday. And man, it's up in the air. It's up in the air big time. The future of Mike Vrabel with the Tennessee Titans, I'm hearing it's 50-50. There are meetings going on today. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Usually, head coach will usually talk to the media the day after the season ends. I mean, I feel like that's pretty standard. But Vrabel will not be talking to the media today. Maybe tomorrow, maybe Wednesday, maybe Thursday, but it ain't going to happen today because probably as we speak, he is having meetings with ownership of the Titans. Amy Adams Strunk, I'm sure Rand Carthon and others having discussions. I to be a fly on the wall in that room. To be a fly on the wall to hear what's going on. And apparently, the thought process that says where there's smoke, there's fire appears to be true. Because we've heard rumors for weeks that, hey, Vrabel's future in Tennessee may not be as surefire as you thought it was. And here we are today finding out that at least to some extent, those rumors were true. No matter what happens, whether he stays or whether he goes, there was some truth to those rumors because something ain't right. Something ain't right. We have heard from players today. The Titans locker room was open as they cleaned out their lockers, and we heard from Will Levis. We heard from Harold Landry. We heard from Jeffrey Simmons. We heard from a number of players today, but no coaches. No coaches. And I thought one of the most telling things that I heard was from Will Levis, who said that he talked to Vrabel, and Vrabel said, hey, I'll let you know when I find out what's going to happen. So, I mean, it's up in the air. It is up in the air. And at this point, I just don't know, guys. I don't know. What's going on? Here's what I want to know. What's the problem? Because we don't really know. We just know that there's something that's not quite right. And I just want to know why. What's the holdup? Is it a Vrabel thing? Is it an Amy thing? Is it a Rand thing? Like, who's upset with who? Because there are some reports I read that make it sound like Vrabel's trying to get out. Then there are some reports I read that sound like they're trying to chase him out the door. And I'm baffled. And I would love to know, like, is there a problem with Vrabel and Rand? Are they not getting along? Do they not see eye to eye? Did Vrabel want somebody else as the GM? I mean, I know it's easy to say, but everything that we've seen from Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel and the two of them together, I've never gotten a vibe of hostility at all. And I know we see very little as fans. We see very little between the two. But like the first thing that Rand Carthon said in his opening presser was, he said, my number one goal is to get on the same page as Mike Vrabel and work together. That's the first thing he said when he got here. I mean, he could be a liar, I guess. And I will say, in your introductory press conference, it's easy to say that. But when it comes time to draft and pick up free agents, maybe that's a little different. Maybe that's a little different story. Maybe it's easier said than done to collaborate with Mike Vrabel. I don't know. Really, I said last week, I said, I'm not going to put much stock in these rumors about Vrabel until Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport attaches their name to the rumors. Well, lo and behold, Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport have both now alluded to this, especially Rappaport on NFL Network. I mean, he pretty much been on there today saying, hey, they're going to go in a room and have a discussion, and who knows what's going to happen. I know what happened when they tried to have a discussion with Mike Mularkey, former head coach. They wanted to make changes. He refused. They fired him. Now, let me say this. They're not going to fire Vrabel. They could trade him, but they're not going to fire him. Firing him would be idiotic. If you're going to get rid of Vrabel, at least trade him and get something in return. And speaking of trades, once again, the New England Patriots have, of course, been brought up as a destination. You know, some people believe that Vrabel wants to go to New England, and that's a big part of this. I don't know if I believe it. I just don't know. I mean, if he can't make things work in Tennessee, I'm sure New England would be a good destination for him for the obvious reasons of that's where he played. But I just have never gotten the vibe that Vrabel is the type guy to sit around and be like, man, I'd love to go coach the Patriots. I've just never gotten that vibe. And lest we forget, Vrabel just said last week, I want to be here. I want to be here. I want to win here. And Will Levis today said, this is a quote from Will Levis, who for the little bit of time he's been here, Will Levis appears to be a pretty genuine, like, he's going to be very truthful, I think, in the media. I mean, I have found him to be very conversational and sincere in his interviews. He said, I know Coach Vrabel wants to be here. I know he wants to be here. So if that's the case, then why are we having meetings? Why is everything up in the air? If he wants to be here, are you telling me Amy has soured on Vrabel? I mean, listen, I know we've fallen on hard times. The Titans are like 6-23 since November of 2022. I understand that, but I have always viewed it like Amy has always been in Vrabel's corner. She has always supported Vrabel. And has she soured on Vrabel? Does she want to go in another direction? I can't believe that. Now, is this a situation where, some people are speculating that Vrabel is trying to pull a Bill O'Brien, that Bill O'Brien did in Houston a few years ago, where he wanted full control. He wanted to be the GM and the head coach. Now, if that's what Vrabel wants, you got to let him go. I will say that. If Vrabel is wanting full control and he wants to be the head coach and the GM and he wants to run the whole thing, you got to say bye-bye. You got to trade him. You can't have somebody in here who's trying to do all of that. I mean, you remember when Bill O'Brien tried to do it with Houston, what a disaster that was. It is not a good thing when somebody wants to be the GM and the head coach and run the whole thing. I'm not saying that's what Vrabel wants. I'm just saying if that's what he wants, you got to say bye. Also, if Vrabel wants to leave, if he gets in a meeting with Amy and flat out says, I want to go to New England, I would rather be there, then you got to let him go. You got to let him go. Nobody wants a player who doesn't want to be here. And I would say the same thing for a coach. Nobody wants a coach that doesn't want to be here. If your heart's not here, then we'd be better off just trading you and setting you free. You know what I'm saying? Now, so knowing that and saying that, I just don't know if I can buy that. I don't know if Vrabel actually wants to go to New England. I've already said he doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. He does not strike me as the type of guy who would be like, man, I'd love to coach for the Patriots. That's where I played. I just don't believe it. Okay. I don't believe that Vrabel wants full control. I don't believe that Vrabel is a head coach. He's a football coach. I don't think Vrabel is interested in playing the role of GM. Now, maybe he wanted somebody else as the GM. We know Vrabel loves him a good in-house hire. He loves him a good, elevate somebody that's already on the staff that he knows. And bringing in Rand Carthon, who was an outsider, that was not something that Vrabel would normally do. Okay. So maybe Vrabel's mad about that. I don't know what the relationship with he and Rand is like behind closed doors. But however we got here, we're here. However we got here, there are meetings happening right now. And there is, other than just a few players doing some basic interviews in the locker room, there is silence in Nashville on this Black Monday, the day after the season ends. There is silence in Nashville. And let me tell you something. I said this on Twitter earlier. I had an ex-girlfriend once who was being eerily quiet and standoffish with me one day, and I felt like something was off, and that night she dumped me. Can't help but think of that as I sit here today listening to the crickets chirp in Nashville. You hear that? Yeah, that silence. That's what we're hearing from Nashville today, and that's not normal. This is not business as usual. It's up in the air. And I'm not here to say like he's gone, but I believe the reports that say it is 50-50. 50-50. And I don't know what the holdup is. I don't know. I do think it is well within reason for Amy and Rand to sit down and be like, hey, bud, this team has not scored over 30 points in a game since December of 2021. It's been over 2 years since the Titans have scored 30 points in a game. It's like we're having trouble scoring points. We're having trouble, this offense oftentimes is unwatchable. It's so bad. You got an answer for that? I mean, I do think it's well within reason to have that conversation, but I don't know, man. Titan Anderson Sports is in the house, and I see the chat today on YouTube is just lighting up, people talking about all this. Some people want to keep Vrabel. Some people want to see Vrabel go. My personal opinion, I think Vrabel has earned another year with a better roster. I mean, with all the cap space and top 10 draft pick that we're going to have, I think Vrabel has probably earned another year, right? He was the coach of the year 2 years ago. So let's not act like this guy's just never done anything good. Of course he has. So, I mean, we just saw yesterday, he had these guys ready to play in a game that really meant nothing for them, and they went out there and blatantly outplayed a team that was playing for their lives. The Titans were hungrier yesterday than the Jaguars were, and the Titans didn't even have anything to eat. The Titans were hungry for a win, and they knew they were going home afterwards. They were hungrier than the Jaguars, who were playing to go to the playoffs. Also, as Evan just said in the chat, I'm hesitant about getting a new head coach, and Will Levis just got here. Like, Will Levis in his second, do you remember? That's one of the main things that screwed up Marcus Mariota, just changing coaches all the time. He changed coaches 3 times while he was here, and he wasn't even here that long. So I'm hesitant about that. Will Dotson says the conversation should be based off of yesterday's performance and play calling. That should be the first question asked. And I've seen a lot of people say that, and that's fair. Why was yesterday's play calling the best offensive play calling that we've seen all year in week 18? The play calling yesterday, it was aggressive. It was creative. It was, It was out of the box, different. Why did we wait till week 18? We were just playing for pride. Like, why weren't we doing that all along? On 2nd and 2, instead of just running it up the middle again, we actually try to play action, like taking shots down the field. Oh, what do you know? And that's one of my big complaints about this year, is that I felt like oftentimes this season we were playing not to lose instead of actively playing to win. Yesterday we played to win. We were aggressive all throughout. And I just want to know where that was all year. Why'd we wait till week 18? Soul Snatcher said something a little bit ago in the chat. I might have to scroll up to find it. Well, it won't scroll up. I have to pull it up on my phone. But either way, you know, there are valid things that I feel like Amy and Rand and other people in ownership need to ask him about. Absolutely. There's plenty of stuff that I think is fair game to bring up and demand answers. Like, why are we not getting Treylon Burks the ball? Is it and here's the thing. When you get Mike Vrabel in a room like that, I want Amy and Rand and whoever else is in there to look at him and say, okay, there ain't no reporters in here. Ain't no media. This is confidential, behind closed doors. Ain't nobody ever going to know about this conversation. Why ain't we getting the ball to Treylon Burks, who was a first-round pick? Is he bad? Does he suck? Is it a play-calling issue? Are we more concerned with getting the ball to other people? Is the guy just not... Was it a bust of a pick? And just ask him. Hey, ain't nobody going to know. This is confidential. Tell us right now why. Why is the offensive line just bad, or are they poorly coached? Are they not learning the right techniques? Or did we just bring in the wrong guys? Was Andre Dillard a bad pick or a bad free agent to bring in? Was Dylan Radins a bad pick? Like, you tell us. What's the plan to fix all of this? Like, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. They have every right to ask Mike Vrabel that, and he has no reason to be offended to be asked that if that's what they're going to do. But we're talking about letting the guy go. We're talking about something going on that's bad enough that they would part ways. What could that be? Like, what could possibly be so bad that it would just be like, we've got to let you go? I don't know. I'm not saying there's not something bad enough, but like, what's he asking for? Like, what is he asking for? I'm refreshing Twitter right here. Now, take this with a grain of salt, everybody. This is a report from Jared Stillman from 1025 The Game. I know Jared Stillman, a lot of people, you know, he says a lot of things that people don't like. But for whatever it's worth, this is a report that he put out on 1025 The Game in Nashville. He said, per a league source, Vrabel is going to request that ownership hire someone to oversee both he and Carthon in a position that will have final say. Stillman reported that Vrabel does not want total control over the roster. Wouldn't that just be Amy Adams-Strunk, the owner? Wouldn't that be the person who oversees Carthon and Vrabel and has final say? Also, he said Vrabel wants more clearly defined roles for assistant GMs Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson. He also mentioned the possibility that depending on how things unfold, Vrabel could be traded to New England or Washington and could even be fired today, citing blow-ups that have happened as a possible reason. Blow-ups. Vrabel just walking around going off on people. A lot of information out there right now. Looks like things are still very much unsettled, and no decisions have been made yet regarding the future of the Titans at this time. I mean, take it all with a grain of salt. But if there's any truth to what I just read, it kind of does sound like that he's not on the same page as Rand. If this is true, sounds like he's not on the same page with the GM. Sounds like there's not seeing eye to eye there. And I don't know about this stuff about blow-ups that have happened. Like him going off on Rand or pitching a fit about something. I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know. Some people, I'm just scrolling Twitter right now. I mean, my entire feed is just stuff about the Titans and Vrabel. Some people seem to think Vrabel wanted his type of guy to be the GM. He wanted an in-house hire that he could have more say, and they didn't do that. I mean, that may be what all this stems from, but like they're not getting rid of Rand Carthon. Rand Carthon has literally not even been here a full calendar year. It would be absolutely reckless to get rid of Rand Carthon, and I don't think they're going to do it. And I will say this. I said earlier, if Vrabel wanted total control, if Vrabel wanted to be the GM and the head coach, you got to let him go. You can't have somebody doing both. I will also say, if Vrabel is mad because he wants one of his guys, quote unquote, to be the GM, and he wants one of his guys, I mean, this just sounds like you're getting into territory where, I mean, I understand collaboration, but at what point is this not even a collaboration anymore? I mean, how are we supposed to build a good roster if Rand and Vrabel don't agree, and then you want somebody to oversee the both of them who's got to decide which one's right and which one's wrong? And now if you've got somebody who's overseeing the GM and the head coach who has final say over everything, then what is Rand Carthon's job even at that point? You know, again, this report may be a load of baloney, but, you know, a lot of people are talking about it, and, you know, I thought it was worth bringing up. Also, I mean, the thing that concerns me the most is what I've heard today from the players. Harold Landry said, "I cannot imagine being on the sideline without Mike Vrabel." That's a quote from Harold Landry. Jeffrey Simmons says, "I would like to play for Mike Vrabel for years to come." Taylor Lewan, I know he's not a current player anymore, but Taylor Lewan on, I believe, NFL Network today said that Mike Vrabel is the best coach he's ever had at any level. Like, when you hear players saying that, like, yeah, that causes me to say, dang, are we going to let this guy go? If the players like him this much and he's apparently this good of a coach, we're really going to let him go? But then, I mean, you know, if you're in a position where he's holding the organization back, you know, and not liking the GM and creating tension there, then you have to, right? Man, it's just, it's got a weird feeling in the pit of my stomach today. I don't know what. You know, I still want to say my gut feeling is that they work it out and he stays, but I've been saying that for months, and I keep seeing stuff that leads me to believe otherwise. You know, as Ian Rappaport said, and I quoted it earlier, Ian said, they're going to go in a room and they're going to have discussion, and as a result of those discussions, I mean, who knows what could happen? All I know is what happened with Mike Mularkey years ago. When he was not willing to compromise with Amy, he was let go. And I just don't know. I mean, I think Vrabel's a better coach than Mularkey considerably. But I don't know, man. This is a weird, you know, I was expecting to come on here today and talk about the game yesterday, because after all, there was a game yesterday, and I was ready to come on here and talk about that, and then this morning, all of this stuff is just blown up, and the rumors are heating up, and, you know, we don't, the bottom line is, at the end of the day, what we do know is that something's wrong. Something's wrong. The rumors don't get to this point. The silence coming out of Nashville today is indicative of it. Something's wrong. What's wrong? We can speculate all day. But at the end of the day, we truly don't know. We can guess, but something's wrong. Something is not right here. And if something is wrong, which we know it is, how wrong is it? How bad is the situation here? Is this a situation where, you know, I keep alluding to this, but it's kind of like dealing with a breakup, or a potential breakup with somebody that you're dating. When you go into a conversation with that person, it's like, okay, how bad's the situation here? Is there a possibility we could break up? Or is this just one of those things that we just need to sit down and talk for a little bit, work through it, and then come back stronger? You know, you know what I'm talking about? Like, sometimes it's not a matter of we need to break up. Sometimes it's a matter of we need to sit down. We need to have a long discussion. I'll air my grievances. You air yours. I'll meet you halfway. Like, you meet me halfway, and let's figure this thing out. I want to make it work. You want to make it work. Let's make it work. That might be what we're dealing with. It may just be an issue of, hey, we need to sit down and talk this out and figure it out. And if he truly wants to be here like he says he does, and if they truly want him here like I believe they do, then maybe it's just a matter of let's sit down for a few hours, talk this out, talk about the direction, get on the same page, and figure out a path forward, okay? But, I mean, sometimes you can try to do that, but if the disagreements are too much, if you're on such different pages that you can't even find a path forward, I mean, it's a crazy business. It's a crazy business, the NFL, and crazy things happen. I would have never expected it to even get to this point with Vrabel. And yet here we are. And I'm still looking here on Twitter. I'm going to be refreshing my Twitter feed for the next 3 or 4 days, just trying to figure out anything. But nothing new, and I don't expect anything new today because Vrabel's not even set to talk to the media today. And, you know, so maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. But I'm definitely anxious about it because I don't know how to feel. I don't know if it would be a good thing to let Vrabel go or not. One thing I will say is that if you are going to need a new head coach, you've got to get Vrabel out of there immediately because you got to get a new head coach. And there's like 7 or 8 other teams trying to get new head coaches. And I believe I saw today the Washington Commanders, they're like already scheduling interviews with people. So, I mean, you don't want to fall behind. You don't want to show up late to the party. If you got to get a new head coach, you don't want to show up late. And if you do get a new head coach, what does that mean for somebody like Tim Kelly? What does that mean for somebody like Shane Bowen? I mean, are we looking at a total overhaul? Man, I don't know. It has been a long time since things have been this up in the air regarding the Titans' entire organization. I don't know. I mean, because if Vrabel leaves, I mean, is it time to, are we wiping the slate clean and starting over? That's something I wouldn't have seen coming, but I mean, I don't know. Arthur Smith, a lot of people talking about Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith was let go by the Falcons. I mean, that clock struck midnight into Black Monday and they fired Arthur Smith. Some people want him back as an offensive coordinator. If Vrabel's back, I could see him hiring Arthur Smith as like an offensive assistant to help out, like he did with Jim Schwartz on defense. But, I mean, if Vrabel's back, he's going to stick with Tim Kelly. And it is 108 days until the draft. We got all this stuff to talk about, but, I mean, we've spent the first half hour of the show here just talking about all this craziness with Vrabel. and who is apparently right now in meetings with ownership about. I mean, what are they talking about? Like, they talking about the roster? They talking about the mindset, the offensive identity? Are they talking about the GM? Are they talking about what? I mean, ugh. There's so much, and it's just because we have so much that's unknown. There's just so much unknown. It's like, why are we having these issues? What's the problem? Who's upset at who? Who's upset? What are you upset about? You know, I get everybody's upset about losing. Everybody's upset about going 6-11. Sure, but upset enough that we're going to go sit in a room and part ways? Man, I don't know. Hey, yesterday there was a football game. I want to say this. The debate has raged on among Titans fans. A lot of people wanted the Titans to lose yesterday. Fans wanted the Titans to lose yesterday so that they could hopefully move up in the draft. And then there were some people who said, hey, let's knock the Jaguars out of the playoffs. That would be funny. And it would be payback for them, you know, and what happened last year. And I couldn't figure out how to feel. I finally went into the game yesterday. I said, you know what? It's a win-win. If we win, we knock the Jags out of the playoffs. If we lose, we could move up in the draft. But with the way things went with the other games, even if the Titans had lost, they would have moved up one spot. Like, to me, staying at 7, and knocking the Jags out of the playoffs, that works for me. I think it's worth it to knock the Jags out of the playoffs and not move up one spot. Because you stay at number 7, and I know we've got months to talk about the draft, but I still think one of those two tackles could still be there at 7. I really do. Because, I mean, who knows if New England's even going to be up there, because they might trade it for Vrabel or something, but assuming everything stays the same and the 6 teams that are in front of us stay in front of us, I mean, I'm starting to think Chicago could go quarterback. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Justin Fields, he did some good things this year, but did he do enough that it would warrant them not trading him and drafting Caleb Williams or something, you know? But I could see Chicago going quarterback. New England, if they're up there, will obviously go quarterback. Washington's going to go quarterback. I think Arizona could go quarterback. And then somebody's going to take Marvin Harrison, you know. And so I think there is a very good chance that at least one of those two tackles could still be there when the Titans are on the clock at number 7. And let me tell you this. I said this yesterday. Worst case scenario. If both of those tackles are gone by the time the Titans draft, and believe me, I know how bad the offensive line is. It's the number one thing we got to address, the offensive line. In fact, on Friday's episode, I'm going to kind of do a season in review. I'm going to look back on the season. I'm going to talk about 5 things that encourage me about the Titans, 5 things that discourage me about the Titans right now, and who knows what situation we'll be in by Friday with all this Vrabel stuff. But I'm going to talk about the season in review on Friday, and who knows, if everything goes down with Vrabel before then, we may have a bonus episode this week. In fact, if something happens, we will have a bonus episode. But, you know, a lot of teams in front of the Titans are going to go quarterback. Somebody's going to take Marvin Harrison. But even if both of those tackles are gone by the time the Titans are up, because Chicago, another option is because Chicago's offensive line's terrible too. If Chicago keeps Fields, they could draft back a little ways and take one of those tackles. Chargers' offensive line is bad. They could take one of those tackles. So, I mean, even if those two tackles are gone by the time the Titans are on the clock, if we take Malik Neighbors out of LSU, wide receiver out of LSU, are you really going to consider that a loss? You know, are you really going to consider taking Malik Neighbors at number 7 in the draft? Are you really going to be like, oh man, you mean tell me that's how you would react to that? No, I'd be just fine if we drafted Malik Neighbors. Okay. What if the Titans are at 7 and they take Brock Bowers, tight end out of Georgia, who would pretty much just be a wide receiver? You mean to tell me you'd be upset about that? You mean it? Don't listen to him, Stanley. Wesley Barnes says I'm always right. I mean, listen, he's a Falcons fan. Wesley Barnes is a Falcons fan. And if there's anything I know about Falcons fans, it's that they are always correct. But, you know, are you really going to tell me you'd be upset if the Titans landed a guy like Malik Neighbors or Brock Bowers at 7? I mean, listen, I know we need the tackles. I know if one of those tackles is there, we got to take them. And you can always get a good wide receiver in the second round. But, like, you know, if we end up getting one of those guys I mentioned, Neighbors or Bowers, I mean, I'd be fine with that. I mean, whoever we take, whether it's the tackles or Bowers or Neighbors or somebody like that, the who's the wide receiver from Florida State that's going to be up there, I wouldn't mind that either. I mean, like, you know, we're in a good spot, you know, and so we stayed right where we were, which is number 7, and we knocked the Jaguars out of the playoffs. I mean, you get the best of both worlds, as the great Hannah Montana Miley Cyrus once said. And you didn't think you were going to get some Hannah Montana on this podcast today, but here we are. So yeah, the game yesterday, I enjoyed it, man. I would be a little more bummed if the Chargers had won and the Cardinals had won, because then, like, it would be like, man, we could have gotten up to number 4. But considering they didn't and we would have only moved up one spot, like, dude, I'm good with it. Like, Jacksonville had it coming. Okay, they talked all that smack. And you know what I said? Now, this is poetry right here, guys. This is poetry. After all that talk about Jags are going to come in here, Jacksonville's going to come in here, and they're going to be contenders. They're going to run the AFC South for years. Trevor Lawrence is going to be a top 5 quarterback. He's elite. He's going to be the man. Jacksonville is finally here. When we took off the disguise at the end of the day, it was always the Jags. At the end of the day, it was always just the Jags. You know, that was their little catchphrase last year into this year. It was always the Jags. That was their little catchphrase. Well, you know what? It's like a Scooby-Doo when they would take off the disguise at the end of the episode. It was like, oh, turns out it was just the same old Jags all along. All that talent they had, Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley, Travis Etienne, Trevor Lawrence, Josh Allen on the defensive side of the ball. All of that stuff they had. And you guys literally did the same thing the Titans did last year. They did the same. They were 8-3 at one point this year. Now, I wish it would have been Tennessee who came back and took the division from them. But instead, it was Houston. But still, it's just poetry. Y'all did the same thing the Titans did last year. You had that big lead, and then you managed to lose, 5 of your last 6 games, and you lose the division. You know what? It couldn't be more fitting. And you know what? Jacksonville, you talk about off-season discussions. Obviously, in Tennessee, we've got plenty going on already with Vrabel and all of this stuff going on. But Jacksonville's going to have some decisions to make about Trevor Lawrence, because he's been here 3 years, right? He's played 3 seasons. And, I mean, usually after 3 years, like, that's when Joe Burrow got paid big money. Like, a lot of these young quarterbacks, after year 3 is when they get paid big money. If Trevor Lawrence comes in there asking for big money from Jacksonville, I'd be like, sir, are you serious? Are you serious? You want big money? I mean, listen, that throw that he missed to Calvin Ridley that would have been a touchdown and would have probably went on to tie the game. Like, everybody's saying Calvin Ridley dropped it. Lawrence threw it too far. Ridley was wide open. You can go back and look at Calvin Ridley's hands. the ball is out of reach. It would have been like an unbelievable catch by Ridley if he'd caught it. It was more of a bad throw than a dropped pass, in my opinion. And then, I don't know if you guys have seen this, Trevor Lawrence went rogue. That 4th and goal where he tried to stretch the ball out, that was not the design play. They broke it down on Twitter. You can tell, like, when you're doing that quarterback sneak with the quarterback trying to leap over the top, like Josh Allen does all the time, like, the Jaguars pulled a guard on that play. So they were like, you don't pull a guard if you're trying to sneak the quarterback or jump the quarterback over the top. You don't pull a guard. So they're pretty much saying the Jaguars had a different play call, and Trevor Lawrence went into business for himself and just tried to stretch the ball over and score. And he got stuffed. Like, what an awful ending to the year for Jacksonville. Awful. Awful. And, you know, I said this earlier. How were the Titans the hungrier team yesterday? The Titans didn't even have anything to eat. They've been out of playoff contention for a month. And yet the Titans looked more happy to be there than the Jaguars. I don't know. And I agree with what Bolt said in the chat there. I think the Jags would have lost to the Browns next week anyway. But, like, I don't know, man. I can't believe how bad the Jaguars looked in that position yesterday with everything on the line, and that's how you played. I mean, listen, I'm not talking about Derrick Henry, but, like, Derrick Henry ain't had runs like that all year. Like, he had a 70-yard run. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen him break one of those off. Well, he did it yesterday. I mean, it's like, what are y'all doing? So I'm totally glad that we knocked Jacksonville out. They had it coming. Bring them back down to earth a little bit. And, you know, and a lot of teams were cheering for Tennessee yesterday because Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Houston all benefited heavily from the Titans winning this game. Derrick Henry sure felt like that was it yesterday. Sure felt like that was his farewell. I mean, I know he said in the post-game press conference that, like, I'd like to come back. I would love to finish my career with the same team. I know he said that, but everything, the way he conducted himself yesterday, which was great. I mean, he's a pro, but the way he conducted himself really felt like this was it. Like, getting on the mic after the game and thanking everybody, saying that, like, I hope I was a good influence on the kids. Like, that felt like a goodbye. That felt like farewell. And then he stayed for hours after the game, signing autographs and taking pictures, posting on social media, thank you, Nashville, for a great 8 years. Like, which, hard to believe he'd been there 8 years. But, you know, it's like, you can say you hope to come back and finish it up here, but it sure feels like that was a goodbye. That was a goodbye. And Ryan Tannehill, he wasn't even shy about it. Tannehill knows he ain't coming back. He literally stood there. Did you guys see? This was probably the funniest thing Tannehill's ever said. He was talking about, because DeAndre Hopkins had some incentives to meet yesterday, like a certain amount of yards he would have gotten, you know, all this money or whatever, and he got there, but it came down to the end. Tannehill was like, man, he said, I was going to force that ball to Hopkins if I had to try and get him his incentives. And he said, and if they get mad at me, he was like, who cares? I'm out of here anyway. He literally said, if they would have gotten mad at me, it's like, dude, I'm out of here anyway. I'm done here. You know, Tannehill probably be a backup somewhere next year. And Tannehill's an interesting topic for Titans fans, because I think the Titans got the best version of Ryan Tannehill that you were ever going to get in the NFL. I think in 2019 and 2020, that was the best, maybe a little bit of 2021. that was the best Tannehill that you were ever going to get. That was as good as he could possibly be. And the thing that sucks and why this why the NFL is so tough is that like Tannehill had a lot of great moments, but he, among a lot of Titans fans, he's going to be remembered for that playoff game against the Bengals where he threw 3 interceptions. I mean, that's going to be what a lot of people think of when they think of Ryan Tannehill and his time in Nashville. That's going to be what comes to mind, and I get it, but that's tough. As far as Derek, listen, I'm made it clear, like Derek, maybe the best Titan ever. I think he may be the best to ever wear the uniform. I mean, he's carried the team for like 5 or 6 years. Like, he's been the face of the franchise for 5 or 6 years. And even, I mean, I'm at a point where it's like, I feel like it's probably time. I feel like yesterday was a good send-off for him. I mean, to have 150 yards and a touchdown against the Jags, like, it just felt right. That felt like a good finale. Like, if this were a TV show, that would have been a good series finale for him to sign off and go somewhere else and finish it up. Like, it was a good finale. And the speech he gave, it just felt good. Felt like a good send-off. And as much as it would suck to see him play for somebody else, I mean, Tyjae Spears is out here looking like the heir to the throne. The kid looks good. I like Spears. And I think that he has shown that he is more than capable. I mean, I think he's going to be a player that everybody's excited about next year when we come in. But there's a lot that's going to happen before next year. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. I don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. Let me refresh Twitter again. You saying I'm delusional, Soul Snatcher? Soul Snatcher said oh, he's talking to somebody else in the chat. He's talking to Dirk Money Swagfly 2 in the chat. Let me see here. I'm just scrolling Twitter. Titans Jeffrey Simmons told the media today that this is going to be the most important offseason of his career. Well, there's that. I think that's more of a personal thing than talking about like the coaching stuff. Yeah, I'm not seeing any new updates on the Vrabel front. That's bad. So here we go. The playoffs are starting. And I'm not going to go through every game like I usually do because I've gone overtime here talking about all of this stuff. On the NFC side of things, I will just say the Eagles look horrible, like to a degree that it's getting a little sad how bad they look. I think, obviously the 49ers, I think the 49ers are still the team to beat in the NFC. Although Dallas, I mean, they got a huge win yesterday. Dallas is there. Detroit, they're an easy team to root for, just because of all they've been through over the last however many decades. The Bucs, surprise team that I would have never expected at the beginning of the year, but they won the NFC South, maybe by default. But the Bucs won the NFC South, and then the Packers take the last playoff spot. And that's, I got to give credit to Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. Things looked pretty bleak for them at one point this year, but, can't argue with the fact that they grabbed that playoff spot. And if I was Dallas, I'd be terrified to play Green Bay in the playoffs because that never works out for Dallas. I'll make picks for the games on Friday, but, I still think the Rams could be a sleeper team in the NFC. The Eagles, I've never seen a team going into the playoffs that looks that bad. I've never seen a team going into the playoffs who looks as bad as the Eagles do currently. AFC, Baltimore's the 1 seed. I'm never going to root for Baltimore. You know how that is. That's an old rival, but they are the team to beat, not just in the AFC, but in the NFL as a whole. The Ravens are the team to beat. The Bills jump up and grab the 2 seed. Are you kidding me? At 11-6. I mean, that feels Like, usually I would expect a 2 seed to be like 12-5, 13-4, but the Bills get it at 11-6. What a turnaround for the Bills, by the way. I mean, the Bills at one point, we thought they weren't even going to make the playoffs. And now, that's just proof that right there, the Bills are proof that the NFL season is long. It's a roller coaster. And sometimes you just got to see it through to the end. And just because something looks a certain way in November does not mean that it's not going to turn around drastically by December. So the Bills are the 2 seed, and that means they get to host most of their playoff games, if not all, at home in that crazy atmosphere of Buffalo. 3 seeds Kansas City. You know how that is. I mean, they're the closest thing you have to a dynasty right now in the NFL. And they're people are honestly still going to be picking them just because they're the Chiefs, even as bad as they've looked for much of the year. I personally wouldn't like to see the Chiefs win another one just because it'd be boring. Houston, I think, is going to cause trouble for some teams, potentially. CJ Stroud looks great. I hope they get put out round 1 because I don't want to see anybody in the AFC South go very far. But Houston ends up, I mean, what a job, though, by DeMeco Ryans and CJ Stroud. I mean, I can't stand the Texans, but year 1 for them to win the AFC, like, who would have even predicted Houston to make the playoffs, much less win the division? I mean, that's nuts. But Houston's in there. Cleveland, I think, is going to be a problem. That defense is so good. What a story Flacco is. They're an easy team, I think, to root for. The Dolphins kind of meltdown here at the end of the year. And they're kind of like the Eagles of the AFC. I mean, they're going into the playoffs. They're there. They're there as a playoff team, but, man, they look iffy at best. And to let Buffalo come back and win the division the way they have. And you want to know what did Miami in at the end of the day? That Monday night game where they let the Titans come back from being down 15 points with 4 minutes to go. I mean, that ended up being the difference for Miami. Is that not crazy? So the Titans ruined 2 teams' offseason hopes, the Jaguars and the Dolphins. I don't think Tua is consistent enough for the Dolphins to make a run. And then at the 7th seed in the AFC, it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers and the Packers find a way into the playoffs because, of course, they do. The Steelers and that's just 2 of those teams. It always works out for them. They always find a way in. They're never bad. They're, at worst, aight. I don't expect the Steelers to make too much noise in the playoffs. I'm assuming they'll keep going with Mason Rudolph. But it came down to it was like either them or the Jags, and I would rather the Steelers make it than the Jags any day of the week. I will make picks for all of these games on Friday. I'm also going to do a season in review, look back on the Titan season, talk about what I liked, what I didn't like. Yes, there were some things I liked. Talk about 5 things I'm encouraged about, 5 things I'm not very much encouraged about as we go forward, and who knows what could change between now and then. I do want to say, if anything crazy happens between now and Friday, be on the lookout because I will be doing a bonus episode if something crazy happens. If they announce that Vrabel's staying, if they announce that Vrabel's going, whenever that news drops, be looking because I will be doing a bonus episode, and I expect that will be between now and Friday. Man, there is so much going on, and the offseason's here. Titans finished 6-11. We'll talk more about that on Friday, and I'm sure there'll be plenty more to talk about, too. This is the Two-Tone Talk by God pod, where we're staying way too high on the wins, way too low on the losses. Please be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Go follow me on Twitter at @twotone_podcast. God bless you guys. Tighten up. Bye, everybody.
Wherever you want to be, feel free to dance, feel free to sing, just feel free. Feels like the world is picking on ya, feels like it's picking on me, but trying to please everybody, that ain't no way to be. So many people try to get you to fit their mold. I think it's time for change.